Inside Rikers, the blood, fear, and silence no one shows. Blood on the floor. The screams echo to the dark hallway of Rikers. A young inmate stumbled out of the shadows, clutching his neck, blood pouring through his fingers. Guards rushed in, but no one asked who did it. No one spoke. The other prisoners kept their eyes locked on the floor, their lips sealed, because inside Rikers, silence is survival. But how can a place so close to New York City, one of the busiest cities in the world, hold such deep secrets of blood, fear, and silence? Why does no one talk, even when their own life is at risk? And here's the question that pulls you in. If silence is the only way to survive, what happens when you break it? The fear that greets you. The first thing new inmates feel when they step into Rikers isn't the cold steel bars. It's the silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is warning you not to speak. You hear whispers about gangs that control the housing units, about guards who look the other way, about debts paid in blood. For some, the silence is worse than the shouting, because shouting means you know what's coming. Silence? That means danger is hiding right behind you. A less extreme moment comes in the mess hall. A new inmate sits down with his tray of watery beans and cold cornbread. No one tells him where to sit, but every inmate knows the invisible lines. The wrong seat can cost you your life. He doesn't know yet, but the others do. They watch him quietly. And then, just as quickly, the quiet breaks. A tray slams against the floor. A fist connects with a jaw. A riot begins. Food flies, blood splatters, and guards charge in swinging batons. The silence of Rikers has turned into chaos. Whispers in the dark. When the riot is over, the floor is still wet with spilled juice and blood. The silence returns, heavier than before. Prisoners are dragged back to their cells, but no one says who started it. No one dares. Later that night, the lights go out in the block. The air feels thick. You can hear the sound of boots pacing down the tier, the jangling of keys, but no voices. Just silence. That's when the whispers begin. Quiet conversations through the cracks of cell doors. Deals being made in the dark. Cigarettes traded. Favors promised. In Rikers, silence in public is power, but whispers in private are survival. A less extreme moment follows. A guard hands out mail. One inmate clutches a letter from his family, the only link to life outside. For a brief moment, he smiles, but the smile fades fast. Because showing joy in Rikers is like showing weakness. Someone will find a way to use it against you. And then it happens. A loud crash echoes from the end of the tier. An inmate has been cornered by two others in the shower room. Fists fly, blades flash, and the water runs red. Guards rush in too late. Another reminder. In Rikers, silence doesn't just keep secrets. Silence buries them. The price of silence. The shower room attack leaves the whole block tense. Everyone saw who did it. Everyone knows why. But when the guard demand answers, the only reply is silence. No names. No nods. Just blank stares. Because at Rikers, speaking means signing your own death note. In the yard the next day, the less extreme rhythm returns. Men pace in circles, some working out, some sitting in small groups, tattoos glinting under the sun. It almost looks normal, like a break from a madness. But normal doesn't last here. Not at Rikers. The silence shifts again when two rival gangs stare each other down across the yard. No words, no threats. Just looks that cut deeper than knives. The tension builds, until one man suddenly rushes forward. A punch is thrown. Shanks appear from hidden spots in shoes and waistbands. The yard erupts in blood and chaos. Guards scream, whistles blast, and inmates are slammed to the ground. In Rikers, the blood spills fast. But the silence after? That lasts forever. The rules you don't see. After the yard explodes in chaos, inmates are herded back inside. Shackled, bleeding, some limping. Yet when the cell slams shut, the same eerie silence fills the air. The message is clear. What happens in the yard stays in the yard. No one dares to speak, even if their face is swollen and cut. A quieter moment follows. In the day room, a few prisoners play cards with scraps of paper. Others watch the broken TV mounted high on the wall. The screen flickers between static and daytime shows from outside. For a few seconds, it feels almost human, like life beyond the razor wire still exists. But it's only a thin mask over fear, because suddenly, a man is dragged out of his seat by two others. His head slams against the concrete table. Blood splatters across the cards. The game ends in silence as fast as it began. Everyone looks away. At Rikers, there are rules written on the walls, and then there are the rules no one dares to speak about. Break those, and the silence around you turns into blood. Nights of no sleep. The night after the attack in the day room, the block doesn't sleep. Every sound echoes louder than usual. The rattle of chains, the slam of gates, the low hum of voices drifting down the tier. But the loudest thing is the silence after each sound. Everyone waits, wondering who's next. A less extreme moment follows when the breakfast trays arrive in the morning. Watery oatmeal, a slice of bread, and lukewarm coffee. Some inmates eat slowly. Others trade their food through the bars for cigarettes or instant noodles. It looks calm, almost routine. But inside, every man knows this is just a quiet before another storm. And then, without warning, guards rush into one cell. An inmate has hung a sheet from the bars, trying to end his own life. Officers cut him down, shouting for backup, while other prisoners bang on their doors. Some cheer, some curse, but most stay silent. Because even in moments of despair, speaking too loud can make you a target. At Rikers, fear doesn't sleep. It just changes shape, from violence to silence to the sound of someone giving up, the debt that never ends. After the failed suicide, the block feels heavier. Some inmates whisper through vents about what drove him to it. Most already know the answer: debts. In Rikers, every pack of ramen, every cigarette, every favor has a price. And if you can't pay, the payment comes in blood. A less extreme scene plays out in the rec area later that day. A group of inmates huddle around a worn basketball, trying to play a game in the cracked courtyard. For a moment, laughter breaks out when someone makes a lucky shot. It almost feels normal, almost like freedom. But everyone watching knows it's only a pause in the cycle. That night, the extreme returns. A man screams from inside his cell. He owes money to the wrong people. By the time guards arrive, his face is swollen, blood seeping into his mattress. He doesn't say a word about who did it. He just stares at the ceiling in silence, because naming names in Rikers is worse than the beating itself. At Rikers, money doesn't just buy food or favors. It buys your life, or it takes it away. The guard's blind eye. The beating over debts leaves the whole tier tense. Guards drag the injured inmate out on a stretcher, but no questions are asked. No reports are written. Inside Rikers, sometimes silence isn't just from the prisoners. It's from the staff, too. A less extreme moment follows during evening count. Guards walk slowly down the tier, flashing their lights into each cell. Inmates stand silently by their doors, waiting for the officer pass. It feels routine, like nothing is wrong. But every man in that block knows the truth. Order here is just an illusion. Then the silence snaps again. A guard opens the cell and finds a hidden weapon, an improvised shank carved from metal. The prisoner is yanked out, slammed against the wall, and dragged away in cuffs. The block erupts in noise. Some laugh, some bang on doors, some whisper about what's coming next. Because when a weapon is taken from one man, the hunt begins for another. At Rikers, blood isn't spilled by accident. It's planned in silence, waiting for the right moment. Messages in silence. After the shank is discovered, the block grows uneasy. Everyone knows someone is about to pay the price for losing it. The silence between the cells becomes sharper, heavier, like the walls themselves are listening. A less extreme moment comes in the library. A few inmates flip through worn-out books, some just staring at the pages without reading. Others write letters, not about love or family, but coded messages. A single phrase hidden in a sentence, a nickname tucked inside a paragraph. Orders passed in silence. To the guards, it looks harmless. To the prisoners, it's a death sentence in disguise. That night, the extreme returns. The lights go out, and the block sinks into darkness. Suddenly, a scream cuts through the silence. Guards rush toward the sound, flashlights sweeping across the tier. One inmate lies curled on the floor of the cell, blood seeping from deep cuts across his arm. Another message delivered, without a single word spoken. At Rikers, silence isn't just fear. It's language. And sometimes that language is written in blood. When words become weapons, the screams from the last attack linger in the block. But by morning, it's as if nothing happened. The guards don't ask questions. The prisoners don't answer them. That's how Rikers works. The silence is stronger than any lock. A less extreme moment plays out during laundry call. Inmates line up to hand over their dirty uniforms. Some joking quietly about the size of shirts, others just staring at the floor. It looks harmless, ordinary. But in Rikers, even small words can be weapons. A single joke at the wrong time can mark you. And then it happens again. In the line, one inmate mutters a curse under his breath. Another hears it. A shove turns into a punch. The laundry room erupts. White uniforms turn red as fists fly, shanks flash, and guards fight to regain control. At Rikers, you don't need a shout to start a war. Sometimes one word is enough. The silence after the storm. The laundry room fight leaves trails of blood across the floor. Shackles rattle as inmates are dragged away, heads bowed, eyes empty. But when the door slams shut again, the block falls into the same heavy silence. No names, no stories, just fear wrapped in quiet. A less extreme moment follows at medical. A few injured prisoners sit in line, waiting to be stitched up. One clutches his arm, another spits blood into a cup. The nurse works in silence too, eyes down, never asking how it happened. Everyone knows the answer already, but no one says it. That night, the extreme returns. In the dead of silence, smoke fills one cell. An inmate has set fire to his mattress, the flames licking at the bars as he screams for air. Guards racing with extinguishers, chaos spilling down the tier. Inmates pound their doors, shouting, coughing. But when the fire is out, when the man is dragged away half-conscious, silence falls again. At Rikers, every storm ends the same way, back in the quiet. A quiet that feels more dangerous than the violence itself. Shadows in the hall. The Chow Hall attack echoes in every inmate's mind, but no one speaks of it. The young man is gone, carried away in shackles, his blood still staining the tiles. By the next morning, it's like he never existed. That's how fast Riker swallows people. A less extreme scene plays out in the hallway. Inmates are marched single file to medical checkups. Their chains rattle, boots scrape against the floor. Some glance at the peeling paint. Others stare straight ahead. It looks calm, almost orderly, like the system has control. But inside, every man knows control is just an illusion. And then, suddenly, the silence breaks. As the line turns a corner, one inmate lunges at another with sharpened toothbrush hidden in his sleeve. Blood sprays across the white wall as guards tackle him to the ground. The hallway erupts in screams and pounding boots. The rest of the inmates keep their eyes forward, lips sealed. Because in Rikers, even when violence explodes inches away, the rule never changes. Silence keeps you alive. At Rikers, the shadows are everywhere, and each one hides a blade. Silence is a weapon. The hallway stabbing leaves streaks of blood that no mop can fully clean. But by the next shift, it's business as usual. No reports, no names. The silence covers everything, like a blanket over the truth. A less extreme moment follows in the commissary line. Inmates clutch slips of paper, trading credits for soap noodles and instant coffee. Some crack small jokes under their breath. Others quietly count their items, eyes darting around. To someone outside, it looks harmless, like shopping. But inside Rikers, every item is a piece of power. Every trade another chain of debt. Then the extreme hits again. In the corner of the commissary, two men begin arguing over a debt unpaid. It starts with whispers, then shoves, then fists. Suddenly, one of them smashes a tuna across the other's face, splitting skin open. Blood sprays across the floor as guards rush in. The line scatters. Inmates press against the walls. But no one says a word. Silence wins again. At Rikers, silence isn't just survival. Sometimes it's the sharpest weapon of all. Eyes that don't blink. The commissary fight leaves everyone on edge. The man who was cut is wheeled out, face wrapped in blood-stained gauze. Yet the rest of the tier goes back to silence, eyes locked forward. At Rikers, staring too long can be as dangerous as speaking too loud. A less extreme scene unfolds in the chapel. A handful of inmates sit in the pews, listening to a soft voice read scripture. For a moment, it feels calm, like a piece of the outside world slipped inside these walls. Some bow their heads in prayer. Others just enjoy the rare quiet. But even here, the silence carries weight. Everyone knows peace never lasts long. And then the extreme erupts again. On the walk back from chapel, a fight explodes in the corridor. A man is shoved against the bars. Fists slam into his face, and a hidden blade flashes. Guards scramble. Alarms blare, and chaos floods a block. When it's over, another stretcher rolls out. The silence returns, heavier than before. At Rikers, even prayer can't protect you. The blood, the fear, and the silence always return. The wall of silence. The corridor attack leaves fresh blood on the bars. But like always, the prison swallows it whole. No questions are asked, no answers are given. The silence hangs heavier than the smell of bleach used to clean the floor. A less extreme moment follows in the rec yard. Some inmates jog laps, others do push-ups, their bodies tattooed and scarred. A few sit quietly at the benches, faces tilted toward the sun, soaking in the little freedom they're allowed. To an outsider, it looks like a break from madness. But to the men inside, it's just the calm before the storm. And then the storm comes. Two gangs collide near the fence, fists flying, shanks flashing in the daylight. The yard explodes into chaos. Bodies slam against the concrete. Blood streaks across the ground, and whistles echo as guards pour in. Batons swing, pepper spray cloud the air. Men cough and choke. But even through the chaos, not one prisoner shouts a name. At Rikers, the wall of silence is stronger than steel, and it always stands, no matter how much blood stains the ground beneath it. The weight of fear. The yard fight leaves men limping back to their cells, some coughing from pepper spray, others wiping blood from their faces. The air is thick with tension, but once the doors slam, silence takes over again. That silence isn't peace. It's fear pressing down on every man like a heavy chain. A less extreme moment follows in the medical wing. Prisoners sit on metal benches, waiting for treatment. One rocks back and forth, whispering prayers under his breath. Another clutches his swollen hand, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The nurse moves quickly, patching wounds without asking questions. In Rikers, silence stretches even into the clinic. Then the extreme crashes back. In the waiting room, one inmate suddenly lunges at another, slamming his head into the wall. Blood pours down the man's face as guards tackle both to the ground. Shouts fill the air, but once the chaos ends, the rule returns. No names, no explanations, just silence. At Rikers, fear isn't just a feeling. It's a weight that never lifts, no matter how loud the violence gets. When silence speaks louder than screams. The medical wing assault leaves streaks of blood down the hallway. Guards drag the men away, their shouts echoing until they vanish behind steel doors. But once again, the tier falls silent. At Rikers, silence isn't the absence of noise, it's the sound of survival. A less extreme moment follows during shower time. Prisoners stand in line, towels draped over their shoulders, waiting their turn. The water runs weak and cold, echoing against the tiles. For a few, it's the only moment of relief in a day full of tension. But even here, silence rules. No one dares turn their back too long. No one dares look too long either. And then it happens. A fight erupts inside the showers. A man is slammed against the wall, his head cracking against the tiles. Another inmate's arm flashes forward, a blade glinting under the dim light. The water turns red as men scatter, shouting drowned out by the spray. Guards rush in too late. At Rikers, even the sound of running water can't wash away the blood. The silence always swallows it back up. The code of silence. The shower attack shakes the whole block. Water mixes with blood on the floor, dripping into the drains like the prison itself is swallowing the evidence. Guards bark orders, doors slam, but the inmates return to their cells wordless. No witnesses. No stories. The code of silence lives stronger than ever. A less extreme moment comes the next morning. Breakfast is served. Gray eggs, burnt toast, bitter coffee. Some eat slowly. Some trade bites through the cracks in the doors. Others push their trays away. For a brief moment, the block feels calm, the quiet hum of routine masking the violence from a night before. But then the extreme shatters the calm. From deep inside the tier, a man's scream rips through the silence. Guards sprint to his cell and find him collapsed on the floor, stabbed again and again. The walls are smeared with blood, his hands shaking as he tries to hold himself together. Yet when the doors open and inmates are questioned, the response is the same: blank stares, lips sealed. At Rikers, the code of silence is unbreakable. It doesn't just hide the violence. It protects it. Living ghosts. The stabbing leaves another body carried out on a stretcher. The cell is hosed down, bleach burn in the air, but the memory lingers. Inside Rikers, men don't just vanish. They become ghosts, remembered only in silence. A less extreme moment comes in the law library. Inmates flip through old, tattered books, some scribbling notes, others staring blankly at the pages. One man quietly works on an appeal, whispering that maybe he'll get out someday. For a moment, hope flickers, but hope is fragile here. Too fragile, because just hours later, the extreme returns. On the walk back from the library, two men clash in the stairwell. Shouts echo against the concrete as fists slam, bodies tumble, and a hidden blade flashes. One inmate collapses, his blood streaking down the steps. Guards flood the stairwell, dragging men in every direction, but the silence remains. Nobody saw. Nobody knows. At Rikers, every hallway hides ghosts, and silence makes sure they stay hidden. The cage within the cage. The stairwell attack leaves fresh blood dripping down the steps, but by morning, it's as if nothing ever happened. The walls are scrubbed clean, the smell of bleach replaces the smell of iron, and the silence returns heavier than before. Inmates don't speak of it. Guards pretend not to know. At Rikers, violence disappears faster than it happens. A less extreme moment follows in the gym. A few prisoners lift rusty weights, their muscles straining under the dull clank of metal. Others run slow laps around the cracked floor. For a brief time, the air feels lighter, like men are just working out, not trapped in cages. Some even laugh quietly, sharing a moment of relief. But everyone knows relief never lasts here. Then the extreme bursts back. In the corner of the gym, a fight breaks out. A dumbbell is swung like a weapon, crashing against a man's shoulder. Another inmate is slammed against the wall, blood streaking across the peeling paint. Guards rush in, batons raised, but the silence holds. No one points, no one names. The cage is filled with violence, but sealed by silence. At Rikers, even when the body is trapped, the silence becomes its own prison. The unseen chains. The gym fight leaves bruises, cuts, and another stretcher rolling out. But once the clang of gates echoes through the block, silence takes its place. At Rikers, violence is a storm, but silence is the calm that swallows a whole. A less extreme scene unfolds in visitation. Behind scratch glass, a few inmates meet family members. A mother presses her hand against the barrier, tears in her eyes. A child asks when his father is coming home. For a fleeting moment, voices rise above the silence, soft and human. But the inmates know the truth. They'll carry those goodbyes back into the cage, where words can get you killed. Then the extreme crashes back. On the walk back from visitation, two rivals lock eyes. That's all it takes. One lunges, a blade flashes, and the hallway fills with screams. Guards wrestle bodies to the ground as blood spatters across the tiles. The visiting family see the chaos through the glass, wide-eyed in horror. But the prisoners? Their lips stay sealed. At Rikers, the chains aren't just on wrists and ankles. The silence itself is another set of chains, ones no key can unlock. Broken promises. The stabbing after visitation shakes the whole block. Families who came to see their loved ones leave with images they'll never forget. Blood on the floor, guards shouting, chaos exploding behind the glass. By the next morning, though, silence smothers it all. Inside Rikers, Yesterday's screams are today's whispers. A less extreme moment follows in the classrooms. A few inmates sit at desks, pretending to learn. A teacher writes on the chalkboard, her voice steady, talking about math and reading. Some men doodle on scraps of paper. Others stare into space. For a brief hour, it feels almost normal, like a school instead of a cage. But normal doesn't last here. Suddenly, the extreme rips the silence apart. Two men jump from their seats, desks crashing to the floor. One swings a sharpened pen, stabbing wildly. Blood spatters across the chalkboard as guards storm in. The teacher screams, covering her face, as inmates scatter to the walls. And when it's over, when the men are dragged out, bleeding and cuffed, the silence returns heavier than before. At Rikers, even the places meant for hope turn into hunting grounds, and the silence covers every broken promise. The watchers. The classroom stabbing leaves chalk dust mixed with blood across the floor. The teachers escorted out, shaken and pale, while inmates are marched back to their cells. The silence that follows feels sharper than glass. Every man knows someone will pay for what just happened. A less extreme scene comes in the day room. A television flickers overhead, playing old reruns. Some inmates sit and watch. Others lean against the wall, eyes half closed. It looks like a break, a chance to breathe. But under the surface, everyone is watching, measuring glances, reading body language, waiting for the next move. And then the extreme slams back into the room. Two men spring forward at the same time, pinning another inmate against the wall. Fists crash into his face, blood splattering against the TV screen. The other inmates look away, pretending the beating isn't happening just feet from them. Guards storm in, dragging the attackers off, but no one speaks. No one ever speaks. At Rikers, the silence isn't just fear, it's the eyes that never stop watching, waiting for the moment when blood breaks it again. Echoes through the walls. The dayroom beating leaves blood splattered on the television screen. But within hours, the flickering picture returns as if nothing happened. Inmates sit back down, eyes fixed on the glowing box, pretending the echoes of fists and screams aren't still bouncing off the walls. A less extreme scene unfolds during mail call. Letters are passed through the bars, some from mothers, some from wives, some never arriving at all. One man holds a photo of his daughter, tracing the edges with trembling fingers. Another rips his letter into pieces, refusing to let anyone see his weakness. The silence during mail call feels different. It's heavy with longing, but still chained by fear. And then the extreme crashes back. A sudden commotion explodes at the far end of the tier. Two inmates slam into each other, fists cracking against bone. A blade flashes in the dim light, and screams cut through the silence. Blood streaks across the floor as guards rush in, shields raised. The tier roars with noise, then, just as quickly, silence reclaims it. At Rikers, the walls don't just hold men in. They trap every echo of violence, burying it beneath silence that no sound could escape. The silence that punishes. The tier attack leaves another man carried out on a stretcher, blood smeared across the concrete. The cell doors slammed shut, and once again, silence falls like a curtain. At Rikers, the silence doesn't just hide violence. It punishes anyone who dares to break it. A less extreme scene unfolds in the library again. Prisoners flip through books, pages turning softly, the only sound in the room. Some pretend to study. Others scribble notes they'll never use. One man reads a letter from the law, shaking his head in frustration. The silence here feels different, thick with hopelessness, not just fear. Then the extreme tears through the calm. A fight erupts between two men at a back table. A chair crashes to the ground, books scatter, and fists pound into flesh. Blood splashes across open pages, soaking into paper. Guards storm in, wrestle the men down, but no one else moves. The rest of the inmates keep their eyes glued to their books, lips sealed. At Rikers, silence doesn't just protect, it condemns. And once it has you, there's no escape. Fear written in eyes. The library fight leaves books stained red, pages torn and scattered across the floor. By nightfall, the blood is scrubbed away, but the silence stays. Men return to their cells, staring through the bars with empty faces. At Rikers, eyes speak louder than mouths, and what they say is always the same: fear. A less extreme moment follows during dinner. Metal trays scrape across tables. Beans, bread, and lukewarm soup are swallowed without a word. Some trade food for cigarettes. Others stare at their meals but don't eat at all. It looks calm, but beneath the surface, the silence is boiling. Everyone knows the night rarely ends without blood. And then it happens again. In the middle of the meal, a man suddenly flips his tray, hot soup splashing into another inmate's face. The room erupts. Chairs slam, fists fly, and one man is pinned to the floor as a sharpened spoon is pressed against his throat. Guards rush in, swinging batons, chaos ripping the air apart. Moments later, silence falls like a hammer. At Rikers, violence comes fast, but silence always comes faster. The walls that listen. The chow hall fight leaves blood smeared across the floor, the smell of burnt soup lingering in the air. By the next morning, the tables are scrubbed clean, but the silence feels sharper than ever. Inmates move carefully, like the very walls are listening to every breath. A less extreme moment comes during morning count. Prisoners stand silently by their cell doors, back straight, eyes down. Guards walk past with flashlights, clicking pens against clipboards. To an outsider, it looks orderly, like control has finally been restored. But inside, every man knows order is an illusion. Behind the silence, violence is waiting. And then the extreme returns. From one of the upper tiers, a shout explodes. A man is shoved over the railing, his body crashing to the floor below with a sickening thud. Screams echo. Guards rush in. Chaos spreads across the block. The silence shatters, but only for a moment. As soon as the body is carried out, the block falls quiet again. At Rikers, the walls don't just hold men in. They hear everything, and they never tell. The weight of secrets. The body that fell from the tier is gone, but the memory of the thud lingers in every ear. Guards drag men away, chains rattling, yet no one speaks. The silence is heavy, carrying secrets too dangerous to name. At Rikers, silence itself becomes another prisoner, locked inside every man. A less extreme moment follows during phone time. Inmates line up for their turn, each clutching numbers scribbled on scraps of paper. Some whisper to their families, voices breaking with emotion. Others speak in code, hiding messages in simple words. And some just stand there, silent, staring at the dial tone. To the outside, it sounds like connection, but inside, silence is still in control. Then the extreme rips through the block. Two men fight over the phone, shoving, fists flying. One slams the receiver into the other's face, splitting skin open. Blood spatters across the glass partition as the line of waiting inmates scatters. Guards rush in, but by the time order is restored, the silence is back, thicker than before. At Rikers, even when words escape through phone lines, the silence inside never loosens its grip. Silence is the final judge. The fight over the phone leaves another man carried out with blood dripping down his face. But once again, when the doors slam, no one speaks. The silence settles back like it always does, unyielding, unforgiving. At Rikers, the silence is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. A less extreme moment comes at lights out. The block falls dark, only the faint glow of danger lights sweeping across the concrete. Some inmates lie awake, staring at the ceiling. Others whisper through vents, trading words no one else can hear. The silence at night is different. It's not just fear. It's the reminder that tomorrow will be the same. Then, the final extreme cuts through the stillness. A sudden scream echoes down the tier. Another fight. Another man left bleeding on the floor. Guards flood the block. Chaos roars. And then, like clockwork, it ends. The silence swallows everything again. Blood, fear, and silence. Inside Rikers, the story never changes. Blood stains the floors. Fear grips every breath, and silence rules it all. No matter how loud the violence, how bright the blood, or how deep the pain, silence always wins. It hides the truth, it buries the names, and it keeps the cycle alive. This is a reality no one shows. A place where silence is more powerful than screams. Where survival means keeping your mouth shut your eyes down and your heart locked away. Because in Rikers, silence isn't just survival. It's the only law that never breaks.